Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So, the Windrunner reunion is probably the most anticipated lore event, or at least one of them, in the IP now, and well, Blizzard have just released it in a comic. This is going to be pretty packed, so let's just get right into it. Now, the Windrunner reunion takes place shortly after Alleria and Vereesa return home from Argus. Alleria can hardly believe what Vereesa has told her about Sylvanas and pretty much decides we've got to have a reunion, she's got to see for herself to sort of believe it. And this all pretty much takes place after the epilogue cinematic and before Alleria officially travels back to Silvermoon to check up on the Void Elves. So the story of the comic kicks off right after we see Alleria and Turalyon in-game, and really this is where we get our first bit of interesting information. We get whispers from the Void, and really it is the typical stuff, you know, prove your loyalty to us, prove our love, slay Turalyon, free him from the curse of the light, stop resisting, all of that kind of, you know, give in style stuff. And I'm assuming that what it means is he can never be enough because there's just, you know, like 3 dots before, which is a bit odd. But yeah, Alleria spends quite a lot of time questioning the viability of their relationship, and that's something you'll see both in-game and throughout this comic. But anyway, she leaves for Eversong and we hop over to Vereesa's perspective. She is trying to explain things to her sons, with one of them making a big deal about Sylvanas being evil and the other one being oddly on point about how throwing big labels around carelessly only damages things and pushes people further away, which is kind of worth taking into the real world. Anyhow, they kind of tease the dream of the three of them being reunited and actually being a family, and then Vereesa leaves to meet the others in Eversong. Sylvanas is not there yet, but she does meet up with Alleria, and Vereesa kind of asks her about the Void, and this is when we get our second Void whisper. The throne of Silvermoon is yours by right. Take it, deliver the weak unto us, and we will grant her purpose. So Vereesa is a bit weak, of course, given all that she's been through, and Alleria being back in Silvermoon, well, she's back shortly after this, and when she's there, she accidentally brings out the Void. So that's kind of interesting. Now, Alleria tells Vereesa that her love to her son kind of anchors her and prevents her from losing her mind to the Void. This is kind of interesting because she had the opportunity to embrace the Void earlier on during the 1,000 Years of War audiobook, but she passed it up, telling Locust Walker that would have been before her destiny demanded it. Now, she only met her son again aboard the Vindicar, so yeah, if she had have taken the Void up earlier, maybe she would have went mad because she wouldn't have had that to anchor her, and it's also interesting that Turalyon is not mentioned here. Then moving on from that, Vereesa tells Alleria about the plan to kill Garrosh during the War Crimes novel, but she kind of bends the truth to make herself seem a bit less culpable. Now, Alleria doesn't think much of this, but it will come up later, and they both think about Lirath, who is their younger brother who was killed during the Second War. And right as they were about to, you know, hold their hands out as if they were going to dance, Sylvanas slips in and surprises the both of them. I suppose being dead kind of is useful for stealth, but the key thing is the Void immediately responds, and it says this one is a threat and must be ended. Beware this one, she seeks the death of all things, all possibilities, murder her, save yourself, and murder her, save the world, and murder her, which is quite the reaction. We are told that, you know, the light, it chooses a path and sticks to it, where the Void explores all possible truths, but it can't really tell which one will come to pass, which is what makes it really maddening. So Sylvanas wanting to kill and raise everything, well, that's interesting, because in Before the Storm, she fancies killing everyone in Stormwind and raising them. So what the Void's doing here is, well, really, it's not that far-fetched. So this is the first time that Alleria has been back home, and she's a little bit surprised about the scar, and of course the reason why the three of them are there together is they want to clear out Windrunner Spire. And it's interesting because Alleria doesn't really seem to know the full degree of Arthas's actions. Anyway, while they're fighting, Alleria and Sylvanas remark on how they've both got stronger. Sylvanas calls up some mounts, and they sort of clear out to, or they head off to Windrunner Spire. And this is where we get to the interesting bit, a game of truths, where each sister will say 3 statements, 2 of them will be true and 1 of them will be a lie. They will then reveal which one was a lie when they reach the Spire. Now, what's interesting here is Sylvanas is the one who suggests playing the game, and that's going to be really important later. So, Alleria starts off, she says that she's missed them both terribly, that the powers of the Void are a tremendous gift, and that she has no regrets stepping through the Dark Portal. Next up is Vereesa, who says that she thinks the Blood Elves can be redeemed, which Sylvanas kind of scoffs at. She says she's made her peace with the death of Ronan, who was her husband, and finally that she fears she will lose both of her sisters forever. I read this as either of them dying or the worst aspects of either of their powers taking over. As for Sylvanas, she says that sometimes she wishes she was still alive, she says she is proud of being the war chief of the Horde, and third, that she will never betray her sisters. At this stage, it seems like they're either baiting the betrayal or giving a nod to how she's really just using the broader Horde population as a means to an end, but this will become super important later. So Alleria calls her out in this betrayal point, thinking that Sylvanas manipulated Vereesa into the Garrosh murder plot, which is a bit of a sore spot for Sylvanas, and the part of her tirade here that really matters is feeling that Vereesa abandoned her. Now, for context, Vereesa backed out of the plan to murder Garrosh and move in with Sylvanas in the Undercity. Vereesa couldn't really face Sylvanas in person, but sent her a letter, which is kind of like a breakup by text, which isn't really a good showing, and that really wounded Sylvanas at a point where she uncharacteristically opened up to somebody and was vulnerable, which is really the key sort of character thing here. Now, of course, Vereesa didn't and still does not know that Sylvanas was also going to kill her and raise her. Sylvanas thought the Forsaken would never accept a living being in a leadership position. Plus, I suppose she would have reckoned that Vereesa, well, she wouldn't leave her if she was also undead. Now, Sylvanas' character is really defined underneath everything by essentially just being lonely and scared of death. Now, a few shades appear, so Sylvanas pops Banshee and does a big re on them. The void instantly enters Alleria's mind when this happens, though, and it pretty much screams she is a violation, she serves the enemy, kill her now, remove her from this world, all sort of big stuff. The void says she serves the true enemy. Now, this is weird, and it referring the true enemy is kind of interesting. The true enemy couldn't be the light. It could be referring to something old god related as a way to convince Alleria to strike. Now, right as this happens, Alleria also pops Void form, which it kind of shows a lack of control on her side. Essentially, both sisters are ready to go ham on each other, and they say they regard each other as mockeries and abominations, but they're kind of snapped out of that when Vereesa points out how much pain they've both put her through, and how even though they have a chance to fix all of their problems now, they're risking pretty much putting her through all of that pain again. So the three of them continue on to Windrunner Spire, and that's where they reveal the lies. So Vereesa lied about being at peace with Ronan's death. She says that she thinks the Void Elves will one day rejoin the Alliance, and that she is indeed afraid of losing both of her sisters again. Now, the Blood Elf thing is kind of interesting because they almost swapped allegiances to the Alliance during Mists of Pandaria, only to have Jaina's actions during the Purge of Dalaran completely destroy any chance of that. Then Alleria reveals that what she said about being totally, the Void being a gift, that was a lie, and that every day she struggles with it, but she knows that it's a struggle that she will win, or at least that's what she thinks. And then Sylvanas refuses to reveal her lie and says that they're done. Alleria is saddened by this. She says that her family is broken, both here and in Stormwind. Now, from what I can tell, Turalyon is totally loyal to her, but the relationship doubts, they're kind of coming from her side of things, probably stoked by the endless whisperings of the Void, and maybe a desire to protect him from her. Now, just before they leave, Vereesa apologizes to Sylvanas for abandoning her, and pretty clear she kind of has a moment. So the sisters leave, and then the big reveal happens. Sylvanas had Dark Rangers hiding, waiting for the signal to attack her sisters. The Rangers drop down from the trees, and Sylvanas tells them that she will let them cling on to their sorrow-filled lives a little bit longer, and it ends with, quote, "They will serve death, they will serve me." They just cannot help but make Sylvanas seem wholly evil. I mean, they really are going beyond Garrosh being a bit spooked by her Valkyrie. Like, look at how she uses her necromantic powers in the Battle for Lordaeron. Look how she considers destroying Stormwind, killing everyone, and raising them as undead. They just keep on giving her these, really strong characterizing moments where she's humanized, and then they throw that out the window by something that's completely over the top and mustache twirling. Anyway, let's talk about what all of this means, starting off with the Sylvanas end of things. So Sylvanas did not reveal her secret. Now, remember that the whole game of truth is something that she suggested to play, and we don't actually know what the signal for the Dark Rangers is. The only unexpected thing was Sylvanas not revealing her lie, which could suggest that the revelation of her lie, that she would never betray her sisters, and that actually was the signal to her Rangers. So she would say, my lie was I would never betray my sisters, and then her two sisters would be full of arrows. Basically, it is a level of very evil, dastardly, needless theatrics that seems completely over the top, but still something Blizzard would do because they really struggle with subtlety a lot. But anyway, if that is the case, then her not doing that does show that while she thought she could kill them, basically she couldn't pull the trigger on it. This would mean that her big speech about serving death and serving her, that could just be keeping up appearances with her Rangers, who would potentially be questioning why she would let two high-level Alliance members pretty much completely off the hook. It also probably is one of those times where the dialogue is more aimed at the reader to give us a memorable end to the comic than to serve the needs of the plot. Now, if this is the case, then it means she is indeed proud to be war chief of the Horde, and she also sometimes wishes that she was alive. The latter makes a lot of sense. Sylvanas' life is one of constant loneliness, fear, and suffering, especially since she had a glimpse of seemingly an infinite abyss that awaits her in death. None of these problems existed when she was alive, and indeed when she was alive while Alleria was gone, she was at home with her sister. So this is a good, humanizing thing that helps to flesh her out a bit more as a character. I just wish that they would do this stuff more through in-game representation and have her be a bit less on the nose of the evil stuff. As for her being proud to lead the Horde, well, that bit kind of does confuse me. From what I can tell in BFA and Before the Storm, she just wants to be back in the Undercity leading the Forsaken. She initially doesn't really think that the scrutiny of being War Chief lends itself to the types of things that she wants to do, but it is entirely possible that she will grow comfortable with wielding the power of the Horde over time and really view it as a valuable tool. So yes, she could be proud of the Horde, even though I kind of do doubt that somewhat. So that's mostly it for Sylvanas. We've got some character depth, we've got some mustache-twirling theatrics. The other main focus, of course, was the Void, which is really interesting. So the Void referred to Sylvanas as the true enemy. Now, Sylvanas does not serve the Light, so that might be a bit confusing, because surely the Light is the true enemy of the Void. So what does the Void mean? Well, if Sylvanas kills Alleria, then the Void loses what is potentially one of its most powerful vessels on Azeroth. Also, Sylvanas might be sort of incorruptible because of her nature. You see, the Lich King couldn't be corrupted by Yogg-Saron, which is something that was a decently motivating chunk of background Wrath lore, even though the connection between Yogg and Arthas is something the Blizzard themselves have said they did not do a good job of showing. This could suggest that the undeath stuff could be like a true enemy to the Void in a way, and that kind of brings up what Sylvanas was saying at the end of the comic. They will serve death, they will serve me, so it kind of brings that into focus. Then as an aside, you know, it's worrying to see Sylvanas talking about death in this way, especially given her musings in Stormwind. She sort of thinks she can free people from their humanity. The logic is getting kind of twisted, and the desires are getting rather Lich Queen-like, which is a bit spooky. Anyway, back to the Void. So we're told that the Void sort of sees all possible truths, but it doesn't really know what will come to pass, and it kind of treats them all as being true, which is what sort of drives people mad. We really see that at play here, with the Void constantly trying to lure Alleria into possible futures and always causing her to question the truth that she is trying to realize. A lot of the Void stuff is more interesting when you kind of look at it from the perspective of it less being pure evil and more just being a level of crazy truth that's really corrupting and maddening. So that's kind of cool. Now, this does bring us on to Alleria and Turalyon. It's clear that she is questioning their relationship. In the Blood Elf, or the Void Elf hub, she says, "Power never comes without a price. You risk losing those who are closest to you," and then she kind of looks off into the distance. So, like, that event in the Void Elf hub happens after the comic, but even here she references her family being broken even in Stormwind. Now, the Void is happy to stoke all of these doubts, and I think that this is setting up a split between these characters in the future. Now, I imagine they would come back together in the end, but having a major split between the Light and Void aligned ground level forces that us players interact with, that would be quite interesting, especially since they relate to our player characters a lot with the plot. This is also coming at a time where Turalyon's Lightforged nature is revealed to be potentially worse and worse. Just look at what happened on AU Draenor, where there was a religious crusade that was kicked off, not because the orcs were warlike and threatening, but simply because they had a different religion. Blizzard are more and more happy to explore the Light and the Void as time goes on, and I think that's going to play a very major role in the future of the game. So if I was to close off this video, I think Blizzard are teasing Alleria's struggle with the Void, a potential rift between her and Turalyon, which could be taken to be rather symbolic in nature for the broader lore of the game. Sylvanas is potentially humanized by her decision to leave her sisters alone, but they potentially undo that by, you know, putting a big mustache twirling, big, like, sort of theatrical speech at the end. As for Vereesa, she's just had a shit time. Neither sister has been really great to her, and she's definitely the character who gets the most empathy, which is kind of a result of her being less tied up in the high concept good versus evil stuff, and therefore having more of her screen time just be devoted to her characterization, which is definitely a strength. I do wonder if she will die in BFA, and if so, will Sylvanas raise her from the dead, which would be drawing a parallel back to her war crimes story that, of course, never came to pass. So there you go, that is what has happened in this comic and what I think about it and what it can mean for the lore. Overall, light and shadow was a massive theme of 7.3. It's going to continue to be a massive theme in the game. All that we know of Battle for Azeroth is, like, we know what happens up to the Uldir raid, and we have absolutely no clue what goes on after that. Which is rare and which is kind of exciting, which means that anytime we get lore like this, it really could be applying like a lot to the near future of the game. We don't know what 8.1, 8.2, or 8.3 will bring, so that's kind of fun. Let me know though what you think about the Light and the Void, where all of this could be going, and yeah, with that, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.
Mm-hmm.